If you ever set up cameras in your own house, don't be surprised by what watches back. That's how I like to start telling people about my little project, my decision to make my home safer. A minor break-in 2 blocks over had shaken me more than I let on. Nothing was stolen from my house, not yet, but I had that gnawing feeling that it was only a matter of time. So I bought cameras, 4 of them top of the line, motion-activated infrared night vision, cloud recording, the whole paranoid setup. I spent the Saturday afternoon like a kid assembling a Lego set, running wires, screwing in mounts, checking angles. The living room, kitchen, hallway, and front door, I covered all the important spots. My cat Tobias followed me from room to room, occasionally batting at the camera lenses as if he already knew that something would eventually be caught. I laughed at him, told him he'd be my first line of defense. It seemed reasonable at the time. By evening, everything was wired up. I made a little ritual out of testing each feed on my phone. Motion detection was perfect. Night vision was crisp. I even congratulated myself on how clean the installation looked. I was proud. I was feeling in control. The kind of control that feels like safety. The first night was quiet. Too quiet, I thought. Every few hours I checked the live feed on my phone. Tobias curled on the couch. The kitchen counters were empty. The hallway was still. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. I went to bed, and for the first time in weeks I slept without that gnawing anxiety. The next morning I reviewed the recordings just to double check. That's when I noticed the first oddity. A shadow flickered along the far wall of the hallway. Nothing obvious, just a dark blur moving too fast to be a person, yet too deliberate to be random light. I rewound the footage and played it again. Same thing. Pause frame by frame. Still there, I rationalized. Maybe it was Tobias. Or maybe a reflection from the streetlight outside. I dismissed it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was wrong. That feeling stayed with me as I went about my day. I told myself that reviewing the footage frame by frame was unnecessary. Yet I did it anyway. That evening I settled in with a cup of coffee, watching the live feeds on my tablet. Tobias slept at my feet. Everything looked normal at first glance. Then a door, the one leading to the guest room, shifted slightly. It wasn't open before. Not by more than a few inches. I froze, my heart raced. I grabbed the tablet and checked the hallway camera. Empty. Nothing moving. No sound, and yet the door had moved. I replayed the footage. Again, it seemed subtle, almost negligible. But combined with the shadow from yesterday, a tiny part of my mind started whispering, "Pay attention." I ignored it, telling myself I was tired, maybe imagining things. I was a tech person. Logic ruled. Yet my curiosity had me checking every angle repeatedly. Every creak of the house sounded amplified when I glanced at the monitors. A few hours later, Tobias bolted upright and hissed at the hallway camera. I followed his gaze, and for the first time I caught it. Just a glimpse. A silhouette in the background of the hallway feed. Too tall, too thin, and moving in a way that didn't make sense. Not human. Not like anything I had seen. My pulse quickened. I paused the playback. I stared, rewound, played again. There it was, slender, limping strangely. The figure disappearing behind a corner that should have blocked it. I told myself it had to be a trick of the light. Lens flare, motion blur. I told myself that for the next hour while sitting rigid on the couch. Tobias refused to move. Even my cat seemed convinced that something was in the house with us, even if I couldn't see it. By midnight, I couldn't sleep. My eyes darted between the tablet and the bedroom door. Every small noise, the creak of a floorboard, The whisper of air through a vent made my stomach tighten. I kept checking the footage. That's when I noticed something else. Little things, almost imperceptible. A shadow stretching further than it should. A reflection of movement in the hallway mirror that didn't match anything in the room. Even the night vision didn't look right. Shapes were just wrong. The scariest part? It didn't make sense. It didn't follow the rules of physics. It didn't follow any rules I knew. My mind tried to argue that I was tired, overthinking, that my paranoia was escalating. But deep down I felt it. The weight of being watched. I wasn't alone. I never had been. I recorded my own voice, whispering silly questions to see if the motion detection would respond. Tobias stared at me wide-eyed and I laughed nervously. Nothing happened. Then from the hallway camera, just a flicker at first, the figure's shape solidified for a moment. I swear it paused as if considering me. And then I heard it, or at least I felt it. A sound, faint, raspy, almost a whisper coming through the camera's microphone feed. My name. I spun around. Tobias hissed. The tablet's screen blinked, static for a moment. I told myself again, logic, science, equipment error. But it wasn't my imagination. I replayed the recording. The whisper was there, clear, unmistakable, and calling me by name. I wish I had ignored the anomaly. I wish I hadn't spent the next 3 hours obsessively going over every frame, every shadow. I wish I had remembered that cameras only capture what they are allowed to see. But that's the thing about curiosity. It has a way of leading you somewhere you can't come back from. And now every time I look at those cameras, I'm reminded that the house isn't mine. Not really. Something else is there, moving in the corners, watching, waiting. And if you ever hear your name whispered through a camera feed, don't answer it. Section 2. Footage that lies. I used to think cameras don't lie. They're supposed to be cold, mechanical things, objective, unemotional. But after that first night, I learned that even a camera can go insane if what it's seeing isn't supposed to exist. It started small. When I played back the footage from the next night, I noticed a cup on the kitchen counter move 2 inches to the left. It happened fast, like a blink. I thought maybe I bumped it earlier and forgot. But the timestamp didn't lie. It was 2 in the morning and I was asleep. Tobias was curled up on the couch the entire time. Nothing else moved except that cup, so I went further. I started watching every recording from every angle, like a detective reviewing evidence of a crime I couldn't define. I took notes. I timestamped weird moments. At first I thought maybe it was a glitch, compression artifacting, motion blur. But every time I checked, I'd find something else. A curtain swang when no air vent was open. The shadow of someone walking across the hallway, except when I switched to the other camera. There was nobody there. By the third night, I stopped sleeping entirely. I just sat there in the glow of the tablet, skipping through hours of mundane stillness for seconds of unexplainable movement. I told myself I'd catch it, whatever it was. Tobias had started hiding under the bed and I didn't blame him. I invited my friend Ben over just to have another pair of eyes. I didn't tell him the real reason. I just said, "Hey, check out this cool camera setup." He rolled his eyes but humored me. We sat there watching the living room feed. Nothing happened. Not even a flicker. "Looks normal to me," he said, stretching. "Wait," I said, fast-forwarding to a timestamp I'd marked earlier. "Here, watch the lamp." The lamp on the table tilted slightly, then straightened again. Ben frowned. "Okay, that's weird," he said. "Maybe the footage glitched?" "Now watch this." I cued another clip. The same lamp hours later, but this time, there was movement. Something darting behind it, too fast to see clearly. Ben squinted, leaned closer to the screen. "That's just compression artifacts," he muttered. "See? The camera can't handle low light, so it blurs. I wanted to believe him, but then I switched to another camera feed, same timestamp, different angle, and there it was again. A shape, not a full person, but an outline. And it wasn't blurred this time. "Look," I said. "You see that? It's standing behind the lamp." Ben blinked. "What? There's nothing there." I stared at him. "It's right there." "How do you not see it?" He shrugged, confused. "Dude, I don't know what you're looking at." "Maybe your monitor's messed up." He couldn't see it. I paused the footage and pointed directly at the shadowy figure. But to him it was empty space, nothing. That's when I realized it wasn't just me watching the footage. It was watching me. After he left, I went back to the recordings. But something had changed. The videos didn't look the same anymore. The lighting was off. Angles didn't match. I knew how my own cameras were positioned, yet in some clips it looked like the shot came from inside the room, not from the mounted corner. Like the lens had moved, or worse, something else was filming. I checked the timestamps again. Some were gone. Entire hours missing. The app showed gaps, dark, empty slots where there should have been video. But when I tried to access them through the local storage, there were files there. Unnamed, blank icons. I clicked one. The screen went black. Then faint static. Then a noise. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. I turned the volume up. The breathing got louder. And then a whisper. "Why are you watching?" My heart stopped. I replayed it 3 times. The whisper was real. It wasn't my imagination. I closed the file and went back to the live feed. Everything looked normal. Too normal. That's when I noticed something else. The cameras were off, not offline, just wrong. The timestamps at the top of each feed were slightly out of sync, like each one was running on its own distorted clock. The hallway camera showed 12:17 a.m. The kitchen said 12:16. The living room, 12:19. I hadn't noticed before, but it had been happening for days. I tried adjusting the sync settings. Nothing worked. Every time I reset the system, it snapped back. And when I looked closely at the hallway feed, there it was again. The figure. Standing closer this time. I froze. It was tall, distorted. Its arms hung too long, fingers brushing the floor. The head tilted slowly, unnaturally. It didn't move like a person, it flowed. And then, just for a second, it lifted its head and stared straight into the camera lens. I don't mean in the direction of. I mean directly into it, and I swear it smiled. My stomach turned. My hands trembled as I watched the screen flicker. The figure took one step forward. The lights in the hallway flashed even though I was only watching a recording. It was like it was reacting to me, like it knew I was watching. Then the footage froze. When I hit play again, it skipped ahead 12 seconds. The hallway was empty. The door was closed. I rewound frame by frame. The figure's face, if you could call it that, filled the screen for a fraction of a second. Eyes black, mouth open too wide, skin gray and stretched. And then gone. I sat there staring at the frozen frame, unable to move. Tobias meowed softly behind me, but I couldn't turn around. Because in the reflection of the tablet screen, just over my shoulder, something moved. Section 3. The first encounter, I couldn't take it anymore. Watching hours of recordings, pausing, rewinding, staring at shadows, it wasn't enough. I needed real-time proof. I needed to see it, or at least prove it existed to myself. So I set up a live monitor in the living room, hallway, and kitchen. Every feed streaming simultaneously. Every sensor armed. I told myself this was the rational way to confront a problem. Rational. The first night, nothing happened. Hours ticked by. Silence broken only by the soft hum of the cameras and the occasional creak of the house settling. I started to think maybe I was losing my mind, imagining patterns where there were none. Maybe it had never existed at all. And then I saw it. It was subtle at first, a dark shape moving along the hallway, slower than a human but fluid, like liquid poured over the floor. I blinked. The figure didn't behave like gravity or anatomy allowed. Its limbs bent in impossible ways. It flowed across the floor without making a sound, like it had learned every weakness in my hardwood. I froze. My hand hovered over the tablet screen, shaking. I whispered to myself, "It's just a shadow. It's just a shadow." But then came the whispers. Soft at first. I thought it was the microphone picking up some stray noise from outside. But then they became clear. My name, my apartment number, the brand of coffee I drink every morning. Details I hadn't spoken aloud in weeks. "You're watching too much, aren't you?" It hissed. I spun around. Tobias hissed from the couch, fur standing on end. But the room was empty. I switched to the hallway feed. The figure had vanished. I panned the live view, my pulse hammering. It didn't appear on the other cameras. It was only there and then gone. As if it existed only where I was looking. Or maybe it existed where it wanted me to see it. I called Ben. I told him I was joking, that I needed him over, that there was a prank. He laughed, reluctantly agreed. 15 minutes later, he was at the door, bag of chips in hand, still muttering about my obsession with surveillance. I tried to act normal. "Watch this," I said, cueing the live feed. "Look at the hallway." The air went cold. My breath fogged in the living room light. On the screen, the shape appeared again. This time faster, sprinting, then pausing mid-step, limbs folding wrong. Ben froze. He blinked, clearly seeing what I was seeing. What is that?" He stammered. "I don't know," I admitted. My voice shook. "But it knows I'm watching it." The whispers grew louder. Names, details, secrets, things I hadn't told anyone. Personal failures, childhood embarrassments, conversations I had thought were private. "You hid that from me." I swallowed hard. Who is there?" I asked aloud. My throat dry, ears straining. The figure paused, head cocked toward the camera, limbs twisted impossibly, then flowed across the hallway in a way no human could. Ben covered his mouth. "That's not real. That can't be real." But it was. I backed away from the monitor and the whispers changed tone. They became taunting, curious. It knew my reactions. Every movement I made, every glance at the feed, it adjusted like a predator studying prey. I tried rational thinking. Maybe the cameras were malfunctioning. Maybe it was a projection, a trick of the sensors. But then I felt it. Not a touch, not a presence. Just a vibration, like the house itself had shifted. And then the door slammed hard. No wind. No one near it. Just the sound of wood striking frame echoing through the quiet apartment. Ben jumped back. "What the hell?" I couldn't answer. I was frozen, staring at the camera. The figure didn't appear this time. But the sound told me everything. It had crossed the line from recording to reality. From shadow to solid presence. The lights flickered. My laptop pinged, camera motion detected. Nothing showed. Just static. I could hear whispers from all directions, repeating every little secret, every minor sin. Things I'd buried deep. Ben grabbed my arm. "We need to leave now." I couldn't. My eyes were glued to the screen. Every frame felt like it held more than a figure, it held intent. Awareness. Malevolence. I finally tore my gaze away, looked at the door. It was still closed. Tobias hissed, fur raised. My living room, my safe space, had become a trap. And I realized then fully that watching wasn't enough. It was interacting. It was learning. I don't know how long we stood there frozen. Time bent. My mind spun with dread, each whisper a needle in my brain. Then, as if satisfied, the house fell silent. Ben left soon after, shaking, muttering about moving out. I stayed. I couldn't leave. I needed to see it again, to understand. I checked the feeds. Empty. Normal. Safe. And then, from the kitchen camera, a shadow moved where no shadow should exist. It flowed across the floor toward me, faster than I could comprehend. The whispers returned, almost a chant. Closer, closer, closer. I didn't move. I couldn't. That night I learned that being observed was nothing compared to being hunted, and that my cameras weren't just recording. They were listening, learning, reporting. When I finally fell into a fitful sleep, it wasn't Tobias curled beside me. It was a shadow stretching along the wall, vanishing the moment my eyes opened. And the door slammed again. Section 4. Rules you don't know. I found the note on a dusty shelf in the living room, wedged between old manuals no one had touched in years. The paper was yellowed, corners frayed, handwriting sharp and rushed. I don't know why I hadn't noticed it before, but it felt like someone had left it just for me, waiting. It said, "If you see it, do not look it in the eyes. Do not record past midnight. Never speak to it directly. Do not think it knows, but it always knows." Simple enough, except it wasn't simple. Not anymore. I read it again and again, memorizing each word, imagining the previous resident, whoever they were, writing these words while trembling. My stomach twisted. They knew. They knew what I had already been doing. Every feed I had recorded, every whisper I had leaned into, I decided to follow the rules. No recordings after midnight. No direct confrontation. No eye contact if it appeared on the monitors. Rational, controlled, but the thing doesn't respect logic. That night I barely slept. I lay on the couch, lights dim, tablet clutched in my hands. I monitored the hallway feed without looking directly at it. I pretended I was asleep. Pretended it wasn't aware I was waiting. It was. A shadow flickered across the kitchen feed, moving like smoke. I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the ceiling, counted the cracks. My heart raced. A whisper brushed my ear, not audible but in my mind. My own thoughts returned in fragments, twisted. "You can't hide." I shivered. I hadn't spoken aloud. I hadn't moved. And yet it knew. Sleep deprivation set in fast. Every attempt at normalcy collapsed. Coffee cups grew cold. Plates stayed uneaten. Even my laptop felt like a threat. I tried to distract myself with work, with videos, anything to drown out the feeling that it was waiting, listening. But the monitors never rested, and neither did it one small slip. I glanced at the hallway feed directly, only for a second. My mistake. The figure froze, head snapping toward the camera, limbs folding wrong, eyes where they shouldn't be. My chest tightened, stomach twisting. I knew the note had warned me, but it was different seeing the consequences in motion. A shadow stretched from the hallway toward the living room. Just a fraction, but enough to remind me it was aware of me. I whispered to myself, "Don't look, don't look." Then I heard footsteps outside. Not on the street, not the neighbor's routine walk. Directly outside the window. I hadn't invited anyone over, and it didn't sound like a human stride. I peeked. My neighbor, Mrs. Daly, stood on her porch staring at my house. Her eyes were wide, her expression odd, confused. She waved, then backed away. She didn't see it, I did, and I couldn't see it clearly. A movement behind her. Something tall, stretched in unnatural ways. blending with the shadows of her yard. I slammed the blinds. My hands shook. I realized then, the rules were never just for my house. Small mistakes mounted. My thoughts drifted toward recording again, toward speaking aloud, toward trying to prove it existed. Every second of hesitation was met with a subtle response. A door slightly ajar, a picture crooked on the wall, a whispering that mimicked the cadence of my thoughts before I even voiced them. I began talking to myself just to test it. I said, "I'm not afraid." The monitors flickered. I said it again, louder. A shadow stretched across the ceiling, crawling, unbroken by walls or doors. I realized I was training it. Every thought, every glance, every tiny infraction was noticed, learned, cataloged. By the third night, I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time. My mind blurred between paranoia and exhaustion. I jumped at every sound, every creak. Tobias, my cat, hissed constantly, fur raised, refusing to enter rooms I had grown used to walking through. And then it spoke. Not from the monitors, not from the speakers. It whispered through the air, through the floor, through my own thoughts. "You can't follow rules you don't understand." I froze. My blood ran cold. I had tried, but failing even slightly mattered. Every rule broken, even unknowingly, provoked a reaction. It was learning me faster than I could learn it. The neighbor noticed something. Mrs. Daly knocked on my door, trembling. I don't know how to explain this," she said. "I saw someone or something in your yard last night. I thought it was a trick of the streetlight." I forced a smile, lying. "Must be shadows, wind." Her eyes narrowed. It looked alive, watching, waiting. I nodded, heart hammering, and closed the door. But I knew she was right. It wasn't confined to my house anymore. It could move, could watch, could wait outside where rules meant nothing. I sank into a chair, staring at the monitors, flickering, recording. Every shadow felt sentient. Every whisper in my head felt alive. I thought about the previous resident who left the note. What had they done? Did they follow the rules perfectly? Or were they punished? I felt a chill. My thoughts weren't my own anymore. The entity could reach me even in my mind, even in my attempts to obey, even in silence. The note had given rules. But the rules were incomplete. The rules were never enough, and somewhere outside, waiting, it was learning the rules I didn't even know existed. Section 5. Eyes everywhere. It started subtly at first. I would glance into the bathroom mirror and catch movement in the reflection that didn't match my own. A flicker, just a fraction of a second, enough to make me jump. I told myself it was exhaustion. The hours of little sleep, the constant paranoia, the relentless monitoring of my cameras. It had to be tricks of the mind, but then it didn't stop. Every reflective surface in my home betrayed me. The kitchen window as I washed dishes, the polished floorboards in the hallway, the screen of my laptop. Everything became a potential window for it. I saw glimpses of a shape, always lurking just at the edges, never fully there, but undeniably watching. And then came the voices. I first thought it was audio feedback from the monitors. But no. These voices were different. Distinct. Personal. The first night I heard my own voice calling my name from the hallway monitor while I sat rigid in the living room. I knew I hadn't spoken. It perfectly imitated me, every inflection, every hesitant pause. I froze, unable to breathe as the sound of my own words filled the room, distorted just enough to make my skin crawl. It learned fast. Friends who came over to check the footage laughed at me when I told them about it. "You're imagining it," they said. But the entity didn't need to appear in front of anyone else. Its reach was mine and mine alone. Then came the mimicked voices of my parents. Long-dead secrets, things I had never shared with anyone, whispered softly as I lay awake. Things like my fear of being alone at night, the argument I had with my brother years ago, the lie I told my best friend about skipping school. Every memory turned into a weapon. Every whispered confession made me question my own mind. Objects began disappearing. Small things at first, my keys, a notebook, a pen I'd left on the counter. But then it graduated to more personal items. A photograph of my mother from my bedroom shelf vanished, replaced by a scrap of paper with a jagged black smudge across it. I checked every corner, under every cushion, and found nothing else. Only subtle signs it had been there, deliberate, calculated. It was always watching, always learning. My cameras caught glimpses, but only if I dared look. And if I dared, the reflection, the lens, the mirror, any surface could show me it was there. And it was always smiling, not a human smile. Something elongated and too wide, the edges of its mouth stretching impossibly, shadows pooling where its eyes should be. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it in the room with me. The whispers continued, sometimes repeating phrases I had spoken earlier in the day. My own thoughts became audible to it. I started writing notes to myself, attempting to outsmart it. But by morning, the notes were gone, replaced with cryptic symbols I didn't recognize. I tried to record its presence, hoping the security cameras could capture it and prove my sanity. That only made it worse. The feeds would show empty rooms when I looked directly. But when I returned later, the same room would have been rearranged. A chair moved an inch to the left, a door slightly open, and there it would be, standing in the corner, silhouetted, staring through the camera lens. Then it spoke. Not whispers this time. Clear, precise. Through the security system's intercom, a voice that could only belong to me, speaking things I had never told anyone. You hide your fear too well. The argument with your brother. The lie to your friend. The secret in the attic. I know it all. I staggered back from the monitor, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I hadn't uttered a word. No one had, and yet it knew. Every detail. Every shame. Every secret. I tried to cover the cameras, unplug the monitors, but it was too late. Covering one lens revealed it in another. Covering all lenses made me feel the pressure, the weight of its attention even more keenly. It was omnipresent. My home, once my sanctuary, had been rewritten. Every reflective surface was a doorway. Every electronic device a window. My thoughts were no longer private. I slept in the living room that night, lights on, blanket wrapped tightly around me. I dared not look at any mirrors, didn't check the hallway feeds. But I could feel it. There, always there. Watching, waiting, smiling. Its voice echoed in my mind, repeating the words it had spoken earlier, twisting them, laughing with a cadence I recognized but couldn't place. I knew then, with a sinking certainty, that there was no running, no hiding. It didn't care about walls or doors or locks. The rules from the note were useless if I couldn't even perceive all of its methods. And then it said my name. Clear, direct, impossible to ignore. It came from the kitchen monitor, though I was standing right next to it. It sounded like me but wrong, like a reflection twisted in the dark. I know you're afraid. I know everything. I collapsed into the chair, shaking. My own voice whispered back from the monitor, imitating my sobs and my pleas. And in that moment I understood. This wasn't just an entity confined to one house, one space, one camera. It had learned me. It had infiltrated every part of my perception. It was inside my mind as much as it was outside. Every mirror, every glass, every shiny surface became a portal for its attention, and every time I blinked I could feel it closer. It didn't just watch, it owned the gaze. And I realized the most horrifying truth of all. No matter how careful I was, no matter how many rules I tried to follow, it had already memorized every weakness. Every fear, every thought. It could see through everything. Section 6. The last playback. I had one plan left. One desperate, ridiculous, potentially fatal plan. Every camera in the house was live. Every speaker wired and functioning. I was going to trap it. See it fully. Prove it existed before it proved me wrong. I set the cameras to record continuously, each angle covering every corner, every reflective surface, every hallway. The monitors blinked in silent readiness. I whispered to myself, repeating the rules from the note, trying to remember every warning. Don't look it in the eyes, don't speak to it directly, don't let it know your fear. I wasn't sure I had any fear left. What I felt now was pure, raw desperation. I switched on all the speakers simultaneously, planning to use sound as a lure. A voice I recorded earlier, my own, looped through the system, calling its name. A mockery, a trap, a challenge. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the tablet controlling everything. At first, nothing, just static. The usual hum of electronics, the low whine of tension in the air. Then it came. The lights flickered once, twice. Shadows rippled across the walls as if a wind had passed through the house, though every window and door was shut. A sound like breathing, deep and wet, came from every speaker. Not my voice this time. Not a whisper. Something different, grotesque, malevolent. And then I saw it. Through the monitors, in real time, I caught a glimpse of what it truly was. Impossible humanoid shape, limbs bending at unnatural angles, skin gray and mottled, almost translucent in places. Its eyes, no, eyes weren't enough to call them that, glistened black, liquid and reflective, absorbing the light around them. Multiple mouths opened along its torso and neck, emitting low guttural sounds, laughter and speech twisted together. It moved impossibly fast, darting from room to room, appearing and disappearing at will. And then through the kitchen monitor it appeared in front of me. I froze. It stood taller than any human should, its head cocked in imitation of curiosity. And in that moment I realized something worse than fear. It knew I wanted it to appear. It knew every motion I would make before I made it. I tried to run, but the floorboards beneath me seemed to stretch, warp, trap me. Its shadow fell over me, long and stretching, then collapsing in a form that should have been human but wasn't. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the house. Its hands, clawed, unnatural, gripped me, cold and unyielding. The monitor showed every angle, every camera, and yet none captured what I felt. The dragging, the suffocating pressure, my body being lifted, pulled, torn from the floor. My last sight before the darkness consumed me was its face, laughing, intelligent, victorious, and impossibly alive. Hours later, when authorities finally entered the house after concerned neighbors reported odd noises and lights flickering, all they found was emptiness. The cameras had continued recording. Playback showed empty rooms, lights flickering, shadows moving unnaturally, yet never the full form of what had taken me. The whispers remained faint in the background, like static holding voices just on the edge of comprehension. They didn't find me. And in the footage, as the authorities stared at the empty house, the last frame showed the monitors themselves, flickering with static, yet clear enough to show one final message appearing on every screen, written in black against the digital feed. If you ever install cameras to catch it, it will catch you first. No one could explain it. The house was silent afterward, but not peaceful. That static still hums in my memory. I can hear it when I close my eyes. The voices, the watching, always watching, and somewhere in another home I know it waits. For the next person who thinks they can observe safely. For the next homeowner who wants to catch what lurks in shadows. For the next curiosity-driven mind, it will be ready. It always is.